good afternoon. My name is Kate Mitchell, and I am doing my Psychology of Music, my Music 210 final presentation on music preference and emotional intensity in individuals with borderline personality traits by me, Kate Mitchell. So my research question for this is basically just, do individuals with higher levels of border personality line traits prefer emotionally intense music compared to those with lower levels of those traits? And from here on out, I will be referring to borderline personality disorder as BPD, just for sake of time. And I have a stutter, so it just kind of gets going sometimes. My independent variable with this study is the level of BPD traits, the higher versus lower levels, and my dependent variable is going to be music preference ratings for emotionally intense music. My purpose statement for this study is to examine whether levels of BPD traits are associated with differences in music preferences, specifically whether individuals with higher borderline personality traits show a stronger preference for emotionally intense music compared to individuals with lower levels of these traits. So getting into my literature review, the first peer-reviewed article that I picked, the first of four, is Music-Related Emotions, Attributions, and Arousal of Adolescents with and Without Borderline Personality Disorder Traits. This study just basically looked at how adolescents with BPD traits responded to emotions in music, and they found that, or the researchers found that they understood and interpreted the emotions in music really similarly to how people without, or the adolescents without BPD traits. However, they showed lower physical reactions while listening to the music. The second peer-reviewed article I did was the role musical preferences play in the modulation of emotions for people with mental disorders. And this study found that people with mental disorders often use music to manage and kind of like cope with these negative emotions and like distress and stress, And it found that individuals, especially ones with personality disorders, preferred more reflective and complex music, such as jazz or classical. And they were more likely to use said music for emotional regulation rather than just for, hey, I want to get my day started, let me get some stimulation going, or just for enjoyment and pleasure. My third peer-reviewed article is called A Systematic Review of Scientific Studies on the Effects of Music in People with Personality Disorders. Also, I'm sorry for that random clanking noise, just ignore that. In this review, found that people with personality disorders typically use and respond to music differently than others, and it suggested that music therapy could really help improve emotional control in relationships and just general well-being. But more research was, of course, needed because they used a really small sample size and just weren't able to get the data they really needed, or like the amount of data they needed, rather. The fourth and final peer-reviewed article I'll be talking about is Borderline Personality Disorder Symptoms Relationship with Music Use, investigating the role of music preferences and functions of music. And this study primarily looked at whether BPD symptoms are related to music preferences, which is a lot of what this study is. And it found that researchers found that people with the more severe BPD symptoms tended to prefer more actual thoughtful, complex, and upbeat music similar to that second one I just talked about, the second peer-reviewed article. And they were less likely to actually enjoy the really intense and rebellious music, and they were less likely to use it for self-understanding or getting to know people and social connection. So the participants I will be using would be undergrad college students recruited from, any university, even multiple universities. I don't want to limit that. With a we want a very varied BPD traits, but also music preferences, if that makes sense. And it'll be about 100 to 150 students, so nothing too crazy. We want enough data to provide for comparing individuals with a higher and lower level of personality traits, as well as music preferences, of course. And then participants will be, they'll be asked to complete a very brief demographic questionnaire, including age, gender, year in college, primary language, and just general music, listening habits. So, hours per day or minutes per day, and then preferred genres as well. So for the procedures of this, super easy, super simple. Starting off, we're going to get consent. You can't do a study without consent. So we got to get their consent, ask them that questionnaire I was just talking about, with the about themselves and their music listening habits. We'll then get into the personality questionnaire, which is 9 questions in total, going off the 9 main symptoms of BPD, and they will complete a survey measuring their traits on a scale of 1 to 7. So, emotional intensity scale of 1 to 7 using a Likert 7-point Likert type scale. From there, we'll then get into the music listening task, where they will be presented with 12 short music clips that they'll then be asked getting into the fifth step. And it'll vary in emotional intensity, but then getting into the fifth step, they'll be asked to rate how much they liked it and how emotionally intense they found it, again on that 7-point Likert type scale, or 7, you know what I'm on about. And then that sixth step is just going to be, hey, we were doing this, they'll be informed about it, and we're doing this to explain the relationship between borderline personality traits and music preferences. So again, nothing super crazy. For the measures, this is just going to kind of get into that fourth step there, or the fourth and fifth step really. They will be asked, after listening to a 30 to 45 second clip of that music, they'll be asked, how much did you like this piece of music, and then rated on a scale of 1 to 7, from 1 not at all to 7 extremely, and how emotionally intense did you find this music. And this will again be from a scale of 1 to 7, so 1 not at all intense to 7 being extremely intense. And this is just going to be used to get average liking scores and an average like emotional intensity score on songs, and then just be able to compare them based on their like borderline trait scores. Our anticipated results are that people with higher borderline traits will prefer the more emotionally intense music rather than the people with the lower personality trait scores, because people with BPD often do experience a lot stronger and a lot more intense emotions. And we're thinking that they would find more relation to it and prefer it more because it might help express and manage those feelings. And then the implications of these results, if they are supported, of course, is that they would suggest that borderline personality traits really do influence how people like connect with and respond to music emotionally, and it could improve like the understanding of music preferences and show that music can be a very useful tool for helping individuals manage very strong emotions and emotional instability. So yeah, this is my final. So yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for teaching this semester.